Okay, hello everyone. So I am Tara, the gentle sleep specialist. I'm sure that most of you have sort of come across me to some degree before, or perhaps followed me on Instagram. So I'm just going to give you a really quick sort of run through of how I came to be in this position. It's been 9 years now that I've been working with families around the globe to resolve their little one's sleep issues, which has been such a great privilege in my life, and I love it. Our team loves it. We have just incredible consultants, all mothers with health backgrounds. So I used to be a pediatric nurse for 7 years. I was in the ped space in nursing after uni. And before that, I worked for many years as a nanny. Pretty much as soon as I could work with babies and kids, that was it. Like I just became obsessed, and that was what I was going to do forever. So yeah, I literally was the person at parties who would ask when I was a child to sit down and hold people's babies. I'm obsessed. I love babies and kids, and I love families and working with them. So I have now worked with families for over 17 years, and 9 of those years have been in the pediatric sleep space. And we work with little ones from essentially from zero or expectant parents all the way through until 9 years of age. So today we're going to be talking about little ones who are in a cot, in the bassy, co-sleeping, for example. But we're going to be talking for little ones who are around two or just over and then under, so from 3 months through to that age, and talking about structures and things like that. So I'm going to start off with talking about structures for so day structures, for example, and then we'll obviously then go into the evenings and self-settling and, how we can stop some of those frequent night wakings and things like that as well. At each point, I'll sort of stop. And if you've got questions, I'll elaborate on those. So basically, for your daytime structuring, what's really important to recognize is that typically it's your nap one and two that are your more important naps of the day. They're the ones that tend to naturally um, get longer, right? And they tend to extend, that's the word. They tend to extend nap one and or two if they're going to extend. Now, when your little one becomes 10 months to 11 months and over, you might find your babe only needs one long nap and then one short nap. If your baby's naturally doing a longer nap or nap two, for example, that's fine and you don't need to change it. However, I'm really not a big fan of capping naps unless you have to. So, really, basically, there's three reasons why I would potentially cap a nap. One is if it's going longer than 3 hours. The other is if you don't cap it, is it then going to impact the nighttime and the rest of the night? And the other reason is that it doesn't mean that if you don't cap it, it's going to mean you can't fit in another nap, right? Typically, once you teach little ones to sleep well and they do start extending, it's very rare that I work with families where the issue is oversleeping during the day. It's not to say that I don't see it. It's just very rare. It's usually something else. It's far more common that it would be another cause rather than that one. So the first thing is that your nap one and or two is the ones that we'd be aiming to extend if you've got a younger babe. Okay, now if you've got a really young babe, it might be the later naps of the day that's extending for them, and that's perfectly fine as well. However, what we want to do is I wouldn't necessarily just be capping nap one at 15 minutes or 30 minutes as like some sort of sleep programs recommend. The reason is because nap one is typically the nap where your little one is more naturally going to extend. So that is the one that if your little one's going to extend, it's more likely that one. That is because as the day goes on, your little ones become more and more sort of worn out, and their stress hormones, like they start to sort of become quite wired, quite irritable, that sort of thing. That's why getting that last nap of the day is often really tricky, right? Whereas getting them down for nap one for most and many people tends to be one of the easier settles, right? That's because we don't have that buildup of the tiredness. It's also because they've got a little bit of leftover, they've had a good sleep at night. Sleep promotes sleep. So that's left over for the morning. And so we're more likely to see the extensions on nap one, which is why I don't like capping it. And then it sets them up with a better sleep, and then that would then support the further, naps that follow. So nap one and two typically are more important. In terms of the awake times, now for some little ones, you will absolutely be able to tell. Like, for example, you just know their awake times, you can tell their tired signs. It's really easy. For others, it's not so easy. And what I like to do, especially for those who you can sort of tell, is can you combine a combination of the right awake time and mix that with some observation for looking for tired signs. So, for example, if you the tired signs that I like to look for are typically more of the calm before the storm. So are they losing engagement? Are they starting to just not want to converse anymore? Yeah, are they not wanting you in their face? That sort of thing. Or are they going quite quiet? They're turning away from or don't want to play with their toys, becoming disinterested, like that sort of thing is what you're looking for when you pair that with the appropriate approximate awake times. So if you sort of know, okay, well, my 5 month old tends to be on about an hour 45 to 2 hours, then you're looking for that bit of that calm before the storm or that loss of engagement. That's often a really good point to go to. For many little ones, by the time that you're seeing those really true tired signs, it's like, ugh, like that can be really when they're overtired. And if your little ones don't show tired signs, sometimes what I love to do is to go, okay, well, here's their normal awake time for that age. Let's try, that and see how they go. There's other factors though that make settles hard or short naps, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. So, as much as we can put the emphasis on the right awake time and like aligning all the stars and all of that sort of thing, we also have to recognize that there's a couple of other factors. But for the right awake times, if you just can't tell those tired signs, you might just go, okay, well, here's the general awake time that my little one, has for that age, or that is just the general awake time for that age. We're going to go by that. Now, one thing that I find so beneficial is really looking at, well, does my little one wake after 30 minutes and cry really hard? Sometimes that can be overtired. Or does my little one, yes, they sleep for 40 to 50 minutes and they wake and they're just, they're okay, they're a bit on and off. You think that they might be going back to sleep, that sort of thing. So you're like, could they, that sort of thing. And it's really important to check those things out, okay? Because that can be under tiredness if they wake closer to the 40 or 50 minutes. So sometimes just trialing 5 or 10 minutes different awake time can really help. As your little one gets older, so as they become 12 months and older, your awake times typically might just need to extend a little bit more. So if you're trialing different awake times and your little one is sort of 18 months, you might trial an extra 15 to 20 minutes. But when they're young, you just trial an extra 5 to 10. Now, when it comes to naps and that sort of process, when we look at nap transitions, this is something really important. And I'm going to draw a few drawings for you guys, um, which is just real special because I should never have been a drawer, but God works in mysterious ways, apparently. So here I am. I'm terrible. I remember Scarlett when she was younger asked me to draw her a horse, and I drawed a horse, and she started crying. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "I really wanted you to try." And I was like, I genuinely did try, but that's okay. All right. So say if your little one has like a 3 hour awake time, let's just say we're talking about a 9, 10 month old and they've got this awake time here, right? Or actually, I'm going to give an example of a younger babe just first. So let's just say we've got a 5 month, 4 to 5 month old, right? And they got 4 naps in their day. We got these 4 naps spanned nicely, right? So this is obviously morning wake time, and this is when bedtime is due, right? Then suddenly this fourth nap is becoming really difficult. Now, a few things I want us to try here. I want us to increase awake time to see if that helps. Does it help when I increase my little one's awake time? Or could we use the car, pram, or carrier to get that last nap? So I never want you to rush transitions between naps, okay? We want to keep the naps as long as we can. It makes a really big difference. Now, guys, this diagram is on 4 naps, but it really doesn't matter if your little one is only on 1 nap or on 2 nap. It's the same idea, okay? So I'm just going to give a few examples, right? Now, what you will also find, and I'm going to do this one here if they're on 1 nap a day, is that your little one, for example, might take 4 naps one day and then take 3 the next, and then take 4. I might take 2, then 1, then 2. These 0, 1, 0 weekends might have 1, daycare days isn't, or vice versa. Usually it's vice versa. But either which way, it's very normal for little ones to transition and to essentially have these periods of time where they'll dice between their naps. That's extremely normal. Okay. And so, what I want us to recognize is that if we've tried using the car, pram, or carrier, so car, pram, or carrier, we've added more awake time, it's still not happening from there. What we need to do is recognize that this nap, let's just say it's time for it to go. Okay. Or, okay, we're getting it, but we're not getting it till like 6:30 p.m. What a blowout. Bedtime's then falling at 8 p.m. No, we don't want that. Same with this one, right? Especially when they're on the one nap a day and they become toddlers and they're getting to closer to 3. If this nap is now not happening till 1 or 2, and then it's pushing bedtime out till 9 p.m., we don't want that. Okay. So let's just say this fourth nap has dropped off. We've then got these 3, or say this one's dropped off, we've then got this one, but we've got these to work with. What you don't want to do is suddenly have this huge gap until bedtime. Okay, because overtiredness is going to exacerbate all the things. It's going to exacerbate early mornings, frequent night waking, because here's the deal: the more overtired your little ones get, the more wired they get. That greatly impacts the second half of the night primarily because they're already in more fragile sleep cycles. Okay. So if they've then got this huge stretch of bedtime, that's a nightmare. So what you want to do in transitioning these naps is then go, okay, I'm going to push this nap out, push this nap out, push this nap out, the third nap, and then we've got bed here, right? This is your winner. Alrighty, so this one here, okay, this second nap's dropping. I'm going to have to put this nap stay here, and then we've got bedtime here. That's what we want to do. Okay. It might mean that your little ones, are essentially having a bigger stretch than what they're used to. And the thing is that if we try these things first and don't rush this, honestly, it makes all the difference. If you rush dropping naps, and especially for babes who don't have good sleep habits, what tends to happen is that they drop their naps too quickly. Their naps become really fragile really early, and it's premature. They actually drop their naps sooner than what they're meant to and or ready to, even though they might show the signs, is because sleep in general is fragile for them because they don't have the good sleep habits and foundations and skills. And so then what happens is that then suddenly, these naps become really tricky for them to get. So we really want to push that out. Now, lucky you guys, I've got another drawing to draw in a minute. But basically what we want to do is that's how we shuffle, and we do that shuffle. And so during that time, it is true that especially when your little one's dropping to no nap, you might need some time, some downtime on a pram walk. They might have it just in the car. It's very normal for little ones from 2 years, 3 months onwards. I want you to take note of this because everyone's going to have a 2-year-old soon enough, that they won't take their nap in their cot or their bed. They'll only take it in the car or pram or on the go, right? And so that's really, really important to recognize that then it's like you can still get it and you'll still get a nap for quite some time, but it'll be on the go and out and about. And it's okay if you do that for a while. It's okay if you can only get nap 4 on the go for a while and things like that. That's completely okay, but we don't want to rush it. Buying yourself even 2 weeks in age, so 2 weeks where you keep that last nap a bit longer, can even make such a big difference. I typically tend to love the idea when it comes to structuring feeds as a feed play sleep. Just as a really loose general rule, I don't conform to like set times of doing things. I tend to find that set times can just really, like, for some babes, they just don't suit that timing, or then it's going to clash with when they're due to go to sleep, or as they get older, you just get lost. If you just essentially wait 15 minutes after your little one wakes, then you offer a feed, then you go on to play, then you go on to sleep. It's such a beautiful pattern that then when they start to drop the naps, it works out really well still with the feeds. And so that's really, really important. So I love that. I also love the idea of doing the last feed 40 minutes before bedtime. So keeping it away from bedtime a little bit. I am going to explain a little bit more about why shortly. So now, guys, in terms of just awake times and structuring, nothing else. I'm going to talk about catnapping after, but does anyone have any questions about those things for me? I'm just going to open it up in the group. If anyone's got any questions, let me know. Yes. So basically, for a 3-month-old, I would still, in their last awake period, I would still typically, after the last nap, I wouldn't do a feed. I'd offer a feed 45 minutes before bed because they're only going to have really 30 or 40 minutes, and then they feed, and then they'll have another 40 minutes and then they'll go to bed. If you feel the need, guys, that's also more so the point. If you've got a little one who's on 3 hours awake time, you can do a feed after the last nap of the day, then another feed 40 minutes before bed. No worries. You can offer solids, obviously, in that awake period if your little one is old enough. But yes, in terms of the feed for a 3-month-old, um, yeah, I typically then have it so that they had even 30 minutes by the time they finish feeding, and then off to bed from there. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to go into, and I really can't stress this enough, for those of you who follow me, you may have seen this before, but this is really important. So what this is it's called sleep pressure. Right. And the importance of sleep pressure is so profound when it comes to not only little ones settling well and doing well with their settles and not having sleep refusal, but it also makes a significant difference if you're looking at making changes. If you're like, I'm going to leave this seminar, I'm going to know what I need to know to be able to make changes, this part is so important as well. Now, what I want to do is look at this at their awake time, right? So let's just say we've got a little one who's awake time. I'm just getting a different pen. Is let's just say we've got a 3-hour awake time. Okay. That one's running out. I'd like to blame the kids for leaving the lids off, but I think that one was me. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it for this one. Might just be my fault. So 3-hour awake time. Then what we're going to look at is that I'd love that we have a 15-minute little cuddle and smooch and, play when they first get up. Then we offer a feed. Then we have a big play, right? So this is just a normal awake time. Play, 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 play. Due to go to bed. You might have solids in here, that sort of thing, right? So we've got a feed, we've got some solids, we've got play, connection time, all of that, and then off to bed from there, right? Now, that's amazing because look at all this time that your little one gets to expend their energy and build up a sleep pressure. But imagine if we're offering multiple feeds in their awake period. This is all milk. Whenever I say feeds, I mean milk. Look how much less time they've got to expend energy. Now, this is the same for a 3-month-old. If you've got a 3-month-old, for example, who's got an awake time of an hour and a half, and you're wondering why they keep refusing their sleep, and they've spent 40 minutes of that feeding, we can see why then it's really hard for them to settle off to sleep, or why they fight sleep or will only sleep on us. Now, this is especially true if they feed right before they're due to go to bed. They don't have enough time, especially if they've been drowsy, zoned out, really chill, had too long on this feed. So this one's been a really drawn out feed because they're half asleep. That unfortunately then means that they've only got this tiny bit of awake time almost to kind of wake up because they're now finished the feed and they've had a little chill. It's like when we sit down for 5 minutes and then we're like, bedtime, and they're like, no thanks. Especially if we're trying to make changes to sleep, keeping an eye on sleep pressure is key for less upset. If your little one truly has the opportunity to have a feed, now, if this, as you mentioned, was the last awake time for a 3-month-old, we might have them up. They might have a bath, a snuggle, a feed here, half an hour play, and then back to bed. Let's just say, right? So we've got the bath here, play and cuddle, feed here, play and bed. Amazing. And that's only an hour and a half. So really, they're not waiting long. If you want to do a feed here and then a feed, here, you absolutely can as well. But it needs to be kept away from sleep. And we need to make sure our feeds aren't going crazy long periods of time. Now, babies who love to use feeds to get drowsy and all of that, it's very common that they will take much too long or much longer than they actually need on feeds. Or they'll snack feed, they'll have bits across their awake time and they won't actually have a big feed until the one right before sleep. This is the same idea if your little one is feeding to sleep. Now, the whole idea is that we make sure during this time we're allowing our little ones the opportunity to build up that sleep pressure. It makes such a profound difference for their ability to settle and to settle much better than what we imagine that they can or will. I'm just putting this down. So it's really, really important that we're looking at that sleep pressure. It's key. It makes such a big difference. Alrighty. Now, moving forward, if we go, okay, we're going to make some sleep changes, I always recommend that we make them from the beginning of the night time. So that day, you do whatever you need to do to get your little one to sleep. Then after that last nap of the day, would be like, right, now we're on Tara's schedule. We're going to make sure our little one's wide awake on the feed, engaged, because you guys will know the same thing, right? Those squiggly shaded out areas of rest, that can also be a car trip. It can be walking the pram. And then, so often parents will say, like, we got home, I tried to put them to bed because it was bedtime, and they just kicked off. They've either been too chill in the car, gotten zoned out, gotten drowsy, or actually even fell asleep. And even if it's for 2 minutes, they like count that as their sleep. Now, what I would also sort of pay attention to is the fact that little ones, they don't know how long they've slept for. And so if your little one falls asleep and you know that they will transfer, you can absolutely do that. If they don't, we've got two options. You either keep them wide awake until they're ready, like until we're ready for them to go down, or alternatively, you let them sleep and then you just try and preserve that sleep and try and give them a 30 to 40-minute nap in the car safely, obviously with your presence if you can. So it's kind of just becomes that preservation factor at that point, just to be able to get them to sleep so that we can move on and move past that sleep. When it comes to the actual evening time and multiple night wakings and things like that, the most common cause is that, let's just say we've got nap time 1, nap time 2, and bedtime, right? So they've got this awake point and they've had their feed and all of that. The most common reason for frequent night waking, what's happening, right, is that there's two sides of things here, right? Is typically that something happens at this point to either get them to sleep or right before sleep, time and time and time again. Babies are born to learn patterns, repetition, something familiar, right? They're not born to think, oh, am I in a Russian orphanage and we can't make sleep change unless that sort of thing. Absolutely not. Our little ones are born to seek connection and they have that strong attachment and connection to us. And, that essentially comes down to a whole range of things. But sleep issues and your little one's reliance on external measures to get back to sleep or to sleep are typically what then come into play time and time again. Now, at 4 months old, what happens is that your little one's sleep cycles consolidate. So instead of just having like 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever they are, your little one's sleep cycles become more adult-like, right? That is just because they're always evolving. Now, developmentally, it's normal. So what will happen is that after that sleep cycle, they come to an awakened point. Now, there's an argument that says babies are meant to wake though. Absolutely. We all do. We all are meant to wake to check that everything is as it was when they fell asleep. Now, if it's different if it's actually a feed time. However, if your little one falls asleep, for example, and when they awaken, something is missing, something's changed, something's not there, you will absolutely get the call out unless it's an internal thing that they do. So for some little ones, it might be that they make a little noise like as they're falling asleep. For others, they suck their thumb. For others, they might like twirl their hair. Something that they do is very different to something that you do. So if you have to fit ball bounce, if you have to keep putting a dummy in time and time again, if you have to feed them to sleep, if they're on and off your breast all night, that sort of thing, that's an external measure. And often what happens is that from when they fell asleep to when they woke up, that's different, changed or gone, right? The other thing is that even if it is a dummy, for example, once they have to find it themselves, they have to awaken enough to grab, use whatever that external measure. Now they're awake, and then you'll typically get the call out. If your little ones are going to sleep well with a dummy, you probably wouldn't be on this seminar. Like some little ones will just sleep well with a dummy, but they always did. And that's just, the way they were. They just slept well with the dummy, right? But what often happens is that they've come out of this lighter surface sleep and they're unable to transition because something is missing, right? That thing becomes the familiar, and it is the way that it is because it was repeated, and that just became what their association was with sleep. It is what it is. There's no shame around it. Like, it's okay. It's totally normal that at points our little one has relied on us to get to sleep. But what we have to remember is that sleep is autonomic. It is something they can absolutely do, and it is something that they can do without you having to do that role time and time again. Same with change. Change feels uncomfortable, but it is absolutely something that we can then teach them as to be able to make that change, for obviously much better sleep, right? So, really important. What I want to do is look at, and this is my last drawing, guys, I promise. And it's an important one, or I wouldn't do it to you. If this is their sleep, like this is, they're gone into essentially they're dropping off from awake into sleep, right? The first half of the night is spent in a naturally deeper sleep for all of us, right? So people go, I know that there's no sleep issues with habits because my little one can self-settle because the first half of the night they sleep for 4 hours straight. That's kind of like accidental because they're in a deeper sleep. But then what happens is come just midnight-ish or after around that point is they come into this lighter surface sleep. So during this time here, they're just transitioning between sleep cycles, right? Coming to these, more alerted points, but transitioning from like essentially in that deeper sleep. What happens is here is that they're now getting into this lighter sleep. They're becoming alert after each sleep cycle, and it should just look essentially not actually like this, but that they're alert, they're checking everything is as it was, and off they go back to sleep again, right? However, if little ones aren't able to get into these good rhythms of sleep, so we know things like the dummy or those external measures absolutely can impact their ability to get into a deep or good sleep. You will notice you'll feel like my little one sleeps with one eye open as soon as I move, as soon as blah, 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 like they're awake, and they might cry like they're bitten by spiders when they wake. Like they're just really, really not getting into a good sleep. Like they're just really, really unsettled, right? If you feel that your little one is coming to these more alert, coming to these points, but then they're just checking everything is as it was. That's of course when it's not a feed time, and suddenly it's missing, right? So the alert is sent off, something's missing, and they're missing something, and they don't have it to get back to sleep. So then the call goes out, you come in, and you repeat. They go back off to sleep. Next one turns into an alert. You come out, blah, 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 and we repeat. And that's how we get frequent night waking. So the things, and this is your early morning. This is your 4 to 5 a.m. one, just pretend, right? You can imagine they come alert. It's 4 to 5 a.m., feeling pretty fresh, even though no one's fresh. It's trickier to get back to sleep at that time. And everyone's like, oh my God, I cannot get them to go back to sleep at that 4 to 5 a.m. mark. Like they're just wide awake. But imagine if our little ones were able to get into a light surface sleep. We're not denying that. They're going to have active sleep, active light surface sleep, very normal for little babes. But they're able to transition between sleep cycles and come to a bit of an alert point and go back off. Imagine how much more amazing that is. It is really amazing. And they get the call out somewhere here because they're hungry and they're not going back off to sleep at that point because they are actually hungry, right? And we're going to go in and offer them the feed. That is what makes magic. Or understanding that, sorry, and making changes. Now, with that being said, there's 3 really primary things that we want to look at when it comes to their ability to have better night sleep. Now, guys, I'm going to talk about changes here, And it doesn't matter if your little one uses a dummy, rocking, feeding, is co-sleeping. It's all the same. It's not the same, I get it, but it's all the same in terms of the changes. So what can happen is at the end, if I say, does anyone have some questions? What I want you to be mindful of is like, so I'm going to explain, I'm going to use things that are interchangeable. So it might be they're feeding off to sleep or they're using the dummy to sleep. There's two things. If it's working, don't change it. No worries. If it was working though, you probably might not be on this seminar. But the other thing is that you can't, if I'm like using the example of a dummy or a feed, and you're like, hey Tara, I'm just wondering how I fix rocking to sleep. Like it's all the same, right? It's all, I want you to apply it all as I'm going to explain it here. Okay. The other thing is that when it comes to making change, for some parents, they just need this seminar and they're like good to go and off they go. For others, they might need a bit more support or guidance during that change process, and we can absolutely help. I'm going to give you as much as I can, and then you can sort of see how you go. But also, if you do make any changes, you should be seeing really good like much easier settles, like good sort of outcomes happening within a few days. Okay, sleep training or sleep help, shouldn't be an ongoing thing. The three things that really make a difference are the right awake time, but it's not the biggest factor, the sleep pressure, and teaching them how to self-settle. That is honestly what I find to be huge changes. It's not switching from formula to cow's milk, from breastfeeding to formula. It's not, holding them out crazy awake times. It's not some special, waking them up after 15 minutes and then feeding at 9:07 and all of this. It's not that. It tends to be those three things that make such a big difference. So if you have frequent night waking or cat napping, this same thing really applies to cat napping. So this is what's really important for us to understand. Cat napping during the day tends to just be essentially just a little bit more like hit and miss in general, or a bit more fragile, let's call it, right? So if your little one after a short nap, I'll do it this way. So let's just say your little one's gone into their sleep. They come out of 40 minutes later, they're coming out of a sleep cycle, then we want them to go back into their next sleep, right? But if your little one has to wake, something's missing, something's changed, they have to wake enough to call out you to come in and do X, Y, and Z, usually from about 4 months onwards, it's really hard to get them back off to sleep. But the key is if they can get into a deeper sleep at the beginning of the night, they're still going to come to these alerted points. They're still going to cycle through the same sleep cycles, all of that. They have an ability to stay in and or transition their sleep cycles way more effectively and way smoother. And also, if they do awaken to a large enough point, we're not banking on like that to not happen. They know then that nothing's changed. They know what to do to get back off to sleep. They become more like internal in terms of what they use to get to sleep, or independent in that. It's not asking them to not be able to regulate. You would regulate with your babes whilst you teach them the skill of really beautiful sleep habits, right? Or you unlearn with them, right? So that is why some little ones, their habits are dummies. Some it's, rocking. For some it's feeding. And people really worry, understandably, about like, but is this going to impact attachment and connection and things like that? It's really, really important to recognize that actually attachment and healthy attachment is not in the absence of no change or no upset or no discomfort, or staying as is and you can't make other decisions. The attachment and the connection really is based around healthy attachment and caregiver and baby like a relationship. It really comes down to a lot of maternal emotional well-being and availability to that babe, and responsiveness, and obviously nurture, love, protection, all the things, right? Making changes to sleep is not going to touch that. In fact, most people report that their babes are more content. They report that they feel better in themselves. They feel more present. They feel like they've actually, able to be the parent that they dreamt that they would be. They have that like oomph for the day. They feel like, yeah, just so, so different in terms of, the changes and things like that. So in terms of when we're making the change, so let me have a look. So Gemma has just asked, What about in terms of holding your baby, but not using the dummy or rocking? So here's the deal. When you first make any changes, can you wean things? So can I, for example, if your little one is used to co-sleeping and dummy and all the things, you could absolutely go, right, tonight I'm not going to use the dummy. I'm just going to hold them, or I'm not going to feed to sleep. I'm just going to rock first. Absolutely, you can do that. But Gemma, the same idea it comes into play that if you are still playing that role to get your babe to sleep, which is no worries, if it's working, beautiful. It's not, I don't have an issue with those things unless they're causing a lot of disruption and frequent waking and things like that. So, what we want to focus on is that, Gemma, yep, that's fine. But then if you put your little one down once they're asleep, please note that in 2 hours later, whenever it is, 9 or 10 p.m., if they wake up and cry, guess what you're going to be called to do again? So until they get to a point where they go from being awake, not drowsy, but awake in their sleep space and put themselves off to sleep and know how to redo that when they wake during the night and stuff, that is what makes the most remarkable changes to sleep and their ability to get into really good sleep. But you can absolutely do that to begin with. You can wean some things. So I would make changes from the beginning of the night. Now, then again, what we need to do is go, do you know what? My babe's going to have a hard time with this transition because they're not born with the fear of changes in how we respond to their sleep. They're born with two primary fears. However, which is falling and loud noises. However, what's become has become really familiar to them. And they're reptilian and they're like their brain is like, any change could spell disaster, stay as is. And also, we don't like to have to think, we like to stay on autopilot because we're reptilian and we're preserving energy, right? So you've got to understand that their brain, just like ours, it's all the same, is like, no change. We hate change. Change means unsafety, and change means using energy, right, during change, right? It's too much of an effort for this brain. However, it doesn't mean it's wrong. And so the perfect examples are when you are in bad jobs, bad relationships, like our whole life is spent really resisting change, which is so exhausting, right? There's people who have mastered it, but for a lot of us, it's not natural, or for all of us, it's not natural and it feels really uncomfortable. Is it wrong? Does it mean that we should stay in the slaves of, being sleep deprived forever? Does it mean that we should let our relationships fall apart because of the depths of sleep deprivation that we're in? Absolutely not. And what I want you guys to remind yourselves of is sleep is so foundational. Now, we live in a society where sleep is like, yeah, sleep when you're dead, grind, hustle, all that sort of stuff. But honestly, we don't have the support system that we used to have. We don't have essentially that I don't doubt that there was ways that not just one woman in a village navigated a babe who didn't sleep all night. Some people will co-sleep and their babe still wants them to stand up and rock 6 times a night. Like that is not sustainable. And that is just going to have side effects elsewhere, essentially, including often the bond and attachment between parent-child. Because how is it to not wake up and just be like, oh, I'm so touched out. I hate breastfeeding now, or I'm so over this, like that. Of course, who would not be? Like, we were not supposed to be like this 24-hour machine that just never stops. That is just not the way the human brain and or body is designed, right? And that's actually not the way that we're supposed to be. Like, we're not martyrs to just motherhood and that's it. Now, does that not mean that we're still the most warm and nurturing and responsive and caring mums who love our children deeply? I literally, for those of you who know me for a long time, like I was divorced from my ex-husband, and I can honestly say, like, I literally spent 2 years in legit counseling because I couldn't deal. I accepted it and I was encouraging of them going to spend time with their dad, of course, but I couldn't deal with the time apart from them. Like I said, like I'm being a mum is like to even today, literally said to my husband, my now husband, I said to him, Charlie's nearly 2. Like, he's going to be out of the home and going to school soon. And in my mind, I thought, I'm just meant to be a forever mum. Like, that's how I felt. Like, I'm meant to have babies in the home. And I was like, I will be doing it through fostering anyway. And he's just like, oh, God. So I am so warm. And I think it's really important to understand that the reason why my little loves are just so happy and healthy and we just have a family that thrives is because when you're sleep deprived, everything slides, your relationships, who you are, like who you feel. Like a lot of the time there's other side effects that come with that, right? And more screen time, or like nutrition choices. Like we don't have the oomph, especially when we get a toddler, to deal with things during the day, and we let things slide and we don't hold boundaries, and we're, they end up running the home because we're like, I don't have it in me, I'm back at work now, I've just got home, you can watch some TV, I cannot deal, right? But it's so different when you set them up foundationally with this. So I can't stress it enough. And for our little ones, it is not a stagnant state. Sleep has the most profound impacts on their emotional, physical, and developmental well-being. I can't stress it enough. So when you make change from the beginning of the night, we're going to do a feed 40 minutes out from bed. They're going to be wide awake on that feed. If they get sleepy on that feed and then you wake them up, they don't know how long they've slept for, so they're going to want a whole 2-hour awake period or whatever it is, and you're going to be like, okay, go to sleep 10 minutes later, and they will have a really hard settle. So wide awake on the feed, play, 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 then off to bed. Method wise, so making changes, there's a few different methods. There's essentially, you can definitely wean and hold instead of rocking and things like that, but you do have to get to the next point. For some people, being in the room and doing really slow weans is great. So they're essentially moving away over a period of time, and essentially not sort of like, you don't just remain stagnant. Now, with this, I always want you to think, no matter which method you go with, is it working for them and or me, or is it making it worse for them? If you are in the room, for some babes, they are just so irritable unless you pick them up when you're right there. So can you still be there if that's what you choose? But can you just be quite quiet at points? Can you sit by the cot and put a hand through and just be a really consistent, steady pat? You don't want to join in the frenzy. Like, you don't want to be like up and down over the cot, getting in and out of the cot, picking up, put down, picking up, put down, like partners in, like you're just like, ugh. We are here, we're in this position. It's because we repetitively did something time and time again. That's become your cue for sleep. It's not sustainable. It's not working for us. Baby, I'm here. We're going to make some changes. It's going to feel really icky because that's your brain's job to keep you with what it knows because it didn't kill you. And now we're making changes, right? And with that change, that's essentially when you could be in, but you need to move away slowly over a period of time. A lot of people will say to me, I went to a sleep school and I've stopped feeding to sleep, but now I've put wheels on the cot and I'm rocking all night, or I'm patting and shushing and I can't get away, or I'm sitting in the room and I'm stuck in the room. So you need to get to a point where eventually you are moving out. If you want to do more of an even slower method, you can do some picking up, putting down in that process. However, remember that if you pick up, put down, it's typically not to get your little one to sleep, it's to calm and then back down again. For some little ones, that makes it so much worse. So please pay attention. Picking up, putting down can often be really disruptive. So I do want you to pay attention to that. For others, they're like, being in the room makes it worse, but I still want to be super supportive. And that might be where you're doing more of your stepping in and out process. You're being in there, but you're also not staying too long, but you're stepping in and out, and you don't have to wait out too long. And then you're going in and out, right? So it might be something like that that you choose. So you could do a bit of a in the room, very slow, pick up, put down if you need, hands on, but weaning, or you could do more of your spaced, sort of soothing sort of thing. Now, yes. So Taylor, in terms of like not what does falling to sleep without a feed look like? I'm going to try feed after waking. So after the last nap of the day, you don't have to feed straight away. You feed 40 minutes before bed. So no matter what you're doing, a feed 40 minutes before bed, but they're wide awake on it. If they don't have the best feed, you can offer again 5 minutes later, but otherwise you do playtime, you still work on a settle. Okay. So that's when you go into one of the methods that you feel is going to like sit well. In our baby sleep program, we literally have the methods like to a T lined up, but we can see how we go with that. What if nights are fine, but naps aren't? Sorry, Anonymous, what is ST? Yep. So Leah, when learning this with the nap extensions, I always say it's going to take a good 2 to 3 weeks for that to come into play. How long should you leave them for to see if they're really upset? Not too long. Okay. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and you can be comforting during that time. If they're doing okay, so they're just on and off, they're happy, they're not upset, they're whinging a bit grizzly, you can leave them up to 30 minutes. But remember, it's only nap 1 and or 2, and that's only once they learn to self-settle. right? Once they can learn to self-settle at the beginning of the night is when you'll see a lot more like better changes during the night, essentially. I'm just going to wait and see. Oh, okay, sleep training. Okay. What if the nights are fine, but naps aren't good with sleep training? Yeah. So, no. So, here's what I would typically recommend. Your babes don't understand your rules, right? So, they don't like, we can't sort of communicate now. During the day, oh, I'm going to do this, but during the night, we're going to do this, and, da da da. Remember, it comes down to that pattern of repetition and association, right? So, if you're like doing, just trying to find my beautiful drawing. But you know the circles, if you're like feed to sleep, now not, feed to sleep, now not, it's really hard. And we don't want to try and spot fix. That can be really problematic. So for some parents, they're like, listen, I'm happy to like feed to sleep all night, but during the day I want this, or I want to be able to feed them to sleep at 10 p.m., but then I don't at 12, but then I'm happy enough at 4. It's really confusing for our little ones. Days are normally, yes, hard, but it's usually because they're either getting zoned out on feeds, the feeds are dragging on, they've lost that sleep pressure, the awake time, or we just need a really solid method. But we start from the beginning of the night, then we work on some resettles unless it's feed time. If they're typically 5 months and above, I would say one feed in the second half of the night. So after sort of 12:30 is suffice, and then working on some resettles aside from that. If it's essentially, if they're under that, you might do 2 feeds 4 hours apart. So they might have their first at say 11 and the next one at 3, for example. So that is what I'd sort of typically recommend. Otherwise, they were working on some resettles. Then you go into the next daytime, and the next daytime might look like solids first if they're older, then a milk feed 45 minutes to an hour before their nap. Or it might look like waiting 15 minutes, doing a milk feed, solids if they're due, like if they're having solids, or otherwise milk feed, play, and then back to sleep from there. And then for the nap, you'd essentially try that same method. For the nap, I would usually only try for around 30 minutes. You could take a little break for 10 and have a little play and then try again for a 10-minute. But if they're not falling asleep at that point, I just use the car pram or carrier, just to get them to sleep, to then reset to try for the next nap, essentially. So that's just sort of, one way so that you can sort of navigate that daytime. But guys, remember, you're also going to get this to play back. So please make sure you have a really good like rewatch, because like this will honestly, like it's really can change sleep like so dramatically just from this webinar. So basically, that's what we'd be looking at in terms of that daytime, in terms of the self-settling and that sort of thing. Now, I've definitely been good and left some time for some questions. So yeah. So Gemma, no, it's actually not the case. We actually work with 3-month olds all the time. Now, what I sort of tend to weigh it up with, right, is that we don't do anything in that fourth trimester. So the first 3 months post out of utero, postpartum. Because we want them their tummies to have time to digest, to learn to digest. We want to set up feeds. We want to really establish that bond. We want to settle them into this whole world situation, all of that, right? But from there, there's really not something specific where we'd say, and really to be honest, Emma, like at 6 months is when they start to have object permanence. So they realize that you're separate to them and things like that. That's not even at 5 months. So a lot of times for the United States people, for example, they might follow a certain lady and she'll say from 5 months only, but there's really, it's not a must, because we're still doing extremely supportive measures. So as long as you are still hands-on, doing really supportive measures, you're keeping an eye on the lineup, you're making sure that things are actually changing, you're not having ongoing sleep training, it's absolutely still supportive enough to make changes. I also like the idea of like weighing things up and being like, well, actually, let's have a look at this. Like, we've got a mum who's so sleep deprived, a babe who's not getting sleep, they're not getting time to rest and digest, they're really windy, colicky, really unsettled babes. The marriage is like, we have to then weigh it up and be like, how, what looks better? Doing some really supportive changes that where they're getting better sleep? Absolutely. But also, there's no rush. So if somebody came to me, they're like, I don't know that I'm ready, but everyone's telling me, I am literally like, go away. Like you do you until you're ready to make changes. Yes. So, Steph, in terms of catnapping, that's this part. So if your little one relies on something external, they're going to wake up here and it's harder for them to get back to sleep. Teaching them to self-settle means that they're able to transition much better and stay in that better sleep pattern. That's the key. The right awake times, building up the sleep pressure. So that doesn't mean making them overtired. It means that they've had that awake time of not just feedy, dozy, sleepy. They've built up that appetite for sleep. And then when they do wake up, giving them every opportunity to see if they will go back to sleep. Okay. So see if, yeah, they will go back, like hold out, see if they will go back, keep them wide awake on their feeds. And then just adjusting that awake time a little bit. Make sure you've tried 10 minutes less as well. So, Sam, here's the deal. If you don't feel confident enough to remove the dummy, my suggestion is that you either join us to help you and guide you as you do it, or you go, no, I'm going to hopefully bank on the fact that one day she might learn to replace it. But a lot of the times, even when babies can replace the dummy, they're now awake and they want you to play the extra role. So often, babes with dummies, the prop is not just the dummy. It's often then you come in and do something like rock with the dummy, pat or feed. If that's the case, then you need to make changes to that as well, or otherwise your babe will keep, even if when they can find it, they'll often keep waking. And for some babes, like, and I'm just being completely honest, I can't tell, like, I don't see, and like, it might just be because I don't see the ones who don't, but it's really, even when people comment on it in groups, like mums groups and stuff, people are like, shall I wait until they find the dummy? And then I don't always feel like that's just the resolve. They find it and then that's it. So, I would just sort of say you could absolutely hang in there. But if you're going to make change and you feel really nervous about it, just do it properly, so to speak, with a really sort of solid plan. Yes. So, Sarah, you're right. A lot of babes, now your lead up sleep pressure starting from the beginning of the night. A lot of babes do worse. So, you could space a little bit or just do some more verbals. Sometimes, too, if you want to be there, just being there and being quiet rather than like, and really annoying them. Like, don't keep laying your babies down if they stand up on the edge of the cot. Especially your toddlers, you will frustrate them immensely, right? If you've got a 2-year-old, essentially your job is just to be really predictable and really consistent and confident, and they will pick up on that 100%. But also making sure, guys, I cannot stress this enough. Not only do screens increase your little one's chances of attention deficit disorders and all the focus attachment things, inability with fine, like lesser abilities with fine and gross motor skills, imagination, wonder, it literally impacts every part of their development, their behaviors, like really impacts that. But it also can really greatly impact their development in particular ways in terms of cognitive. It is really important that screens don't come into play until your little one is preferably close to 3 and over. And that when they do, they aren't put close to sleep, because not only will they then cause behavioral issues when they're turned off, which is right before sleep, they will ruin that thing called sleep pressure. And they often, and sorry, not often, they absolutely inhibit the release or impede the release of melatonin, which is our little one's drowsy hormones. So it is just, I can't stress it enough. Like, sleep is just so, I mean, TV screens, iPads, whatever it looks like. We all know what it is. It's digital. Doesn't matter if it's TV, whatever it is. The smaller and the closer they hold it, the worse it is. So when you do allow it, make sure that it is your bigger screens. 3 and 4-year-olds do not need iPads. It is your bigger screens and there's a big distance. But not just that, but also that it's limited and it's not near sleep time. Yes. So, Jess, I have a beautiful video on this. Now, Jess, you're going to have this video forever, right? So this is amazing. And I want you to look back on this. I'm not going to go into what you can do for newborns right now because, hun, I've got an entire free video of this for, like, there's no catch, on my website under free resources. It's a 30-minute video. I want you to watch it and take notes, because that is like, ugh, it's me telling you, like, you don't have to work with me. Here's what I want you to do for newborns, And then when your little one is coming close to 3 months, that's when you bring this into play. Yeah, so Melissa, it's the same idea. It's the sleep pressure, the right awake time, the right method, making sure you're not overdoing the method. Patting his back is probably really annoying him. At his level is only like if he's like crying and you're like getting like like faster or whatever that at his level is a bit firmer, whatever that is like. But imagine if you were just confidently and calmly there. Shh, it's all right, Papa. I know, Mummy's here. Shh. A nice firm rub. Nice firm strokes. Okay, baby. Right? Just that. Just chill. And with confidence, it'll make a big difference. We don't want to go like matching them, right? Because that's just like really, that's just like going to elevate everything. But also your lead up and essentially looking at, well, is he really just bothered by my physical? Am I better off just sitting here and humming a song and repeat for a few times or doing a shush or just, putting a hand on him, but just leaving it there or patting the mattress a little bit or things like that? Oh, 100% Sarah, and it's probably just tiredness and a bit of that change, but you should be noticing things settle in terms of the sleep very soon. So usually, Kath, how do we know if it's hunger or association? Usually what we find is that as long as we've ticked off like that, they're like they're not, there's no feeding issues, so to speak. Even to be honest, most feeding issues we can still really make big changes and it's amazing. But if we, there's no issues with weight or something significant, right? We generally know, like even pediatricians will say from 6 months onwards, little ones could be sufficed with no feed. I don't believe I no, I believe that. I don't do that, abide by that. What we do is we're happy to keep one night feed up until 12 months of age. If they're 4 months and younger, we keep the two. If they're newborns, up to 3 months, however many you need to do. And we just are confident in that. Uh, Nerida, listen, I would say even if you want to spend 2 days, just trying to get her to not get drowsy on that last sleep. Only thing is that you will need to probably do some resettles during the night to help her back to sleep. So 100% Taylor, it's not drowsy. It's wide awake, not tired, yes, but not drowsy. Yeah, a lot of people find once they pick up, they just fall asleep. To be honest, Taylor, it's the lead up usually, and it's also essentially just making sure that with that lead up, um, that it's like right in terms of that sleep pressure, and then you're supporting during the settle, but you're not necessarily fixing to sleep. That's the big difference. FaceTime is screen time, but like honestly, Leah, when you've got a partner who works FIFO, and often like I wouldn't necessarily be like on the phone to your partner for 30 minutes within in front of your baby's face, right? That's probably too much. But if there's just like, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like fine, absolutely fine. I get it. I actually really understand that my ex was FIFO for our whole relationship, including having the young kids. Um, yeah, so I get it. I just wouldn't be like while you're chatting, like if it's not necessary in that moment, but of course for him to see her or, that sort of thing, no problems. Okay, so what I would say is that it's time, Steph, to work more on not getting drowsy to sleep and to then awake. It's more like wide awake, wide awake, wide awake, then going into the sleep space. That's going to be a game changer for you. And also that sleep pressure in general, I'd say that that's why she's resisting. Or is she just bored? Like, do you need to change it up? Is her awake time way too short? Oh, sorry, Kath, I forget people can't see the questions. I'm sorry. So that last question was basically about Steph's little one is resisting sleep. But then she keeps like jolting open and how does she sort of navigate that? And I was saying like going from wide awake to asleep is going to be so much better. Okay. So Stephen, no worries. Listen, the educational relaxing songs, get rid of them. We want her brain to be like off. It's not going to be actually off, but like babes don't need to be like picking up all that stuff in their sleep. The difference between, I love the use of low white or brown noise, for example, just a like ongoing, great, but on low, because there's more research about them being able to stay in deeper sleep, and it blocks the external stimuli and things like that, right? So it's better. When a brain has to pick up the tones, the patterns, the noises, and it's picking up, learning whatever it is, like you can imagine it's just like, it's on auditory, it's like all on. Whereas the other way, it's not so much. So I personally would be like getting rid of a low white noise is great. Now, Stephen, it's hard. If you guys are really happy with where things are, would I necessarily change it? No, if not for the sake of just the fact that she's having short naps. I don't know how many days she's in daycare. So Steve's saying her little one, sorry, his little one is in daycare, and they've only ever napped in the pram or the car. But now she's at daycare, the naps are very short. It's tricky because, again, I don't really like to spot fire things. So I would be all in or all out, Stephen. I'd either make the change from the beginning of the night, work on self-settling from the beginning of the night, and then carry that through to the daytime so that you hopefully see things extend at daycare, right? But also daycare could be noise. It could be that what the instructors are doing. So, or you're all out, which means you stay with what you're doing. Your babe gets, the 2 naps in the day. Try and keep them as long as you can so that your little one's getting enough to sleep to then get through to bedtime. And I hope that makes sense, but I would be all in and all out. So absolutely, if there's any sort of crying, like during any changes, what I would be looking at is like, is it dramatically lessening? The crying, any crying during these changes should be dramatically lessening, right? And if your little one is getting like a hoarse voice, if you think about like when you're emotionally like really upset, like you're not getting a hoarse voice from that, right? From being like really, really upset. Like, and now I'm not saying your babe's not upset or really, really disgruntled or just whatever you want to use the word as, protesting that change, upset, feeling really unsettled around that change, 100%. But when they're really worked up, like you've got to get that more, that is more like that, they're just really worked up at that point. So I, as in quite frustrated, maybe annoyed, that sort of thing, I would really be looking at, have you got the right awake time? What is your method? And is it like, a really good one? I would also be looking at where's the sleep pressure at for your baby. And guys, if you notice I'm not staring at the computer too much, I should have said this earlier. It's because I get migraines. So I'm just trying to avoid the screen so much. So I hope no one thinks I'm not being good with my eye contact. I'd usually be like looking like this, but I'm just trying to like preserve my eyes and my head. If anyone just happens to be a like magician, neurologist or something here who doesn't prescribe medication only, I'm all for some input. If anyone's got those magic like natural fixes, I'm all about it. Basically I would absolutely be looking at your sleep pressure, your lead up, trialing different awake times, looking at your method, because you should really notice that it's really settling down. And it sounds like your babe's quite angry, like quite like with that change rather than like that real like, so I would be looking at those things, particularly that lead up, the wide awake on feeds and things like that. Yes, I hope that helps. Awesome, guys. Well, I am putting on a discount for the baby sleep program for you guys who have joined the webinar. I'm going to send all of this tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll get an email with this replay. You'll get the discount code if you want to join. There's no pressure by me, of course. It's going to be 20% off. I literally never, hardly ever do sales. I'm just want to offer it, which means essentially, so you can jump in if you want to. I'm going to do the sale for around 4 days for you guys to join if you choose to. So I will send those details through for you guys tomorrow. You know where I am, right? If you guys, need any further guidance, please reach out. Thank you for joining me tonight, and biggest love. And I hope that you got a lot from the session. Big love, everyone. See you soon.